was a quiet Saturday morning in early autumn. The sky outside my window was pale blue, and a soft light filled the room. The air felt cool and fresh. I sat at the table drinking my morning coffee and looked at the empty cup. The weekend had just begun, and I wanted to do something simple but pleasant. Suddenly, I remembered that a new book by Dan Brown had just come out. I had read all his previous novels, and each one had taken me on an exciting journey full of secrets and history. I smiled and thought, why not buy it today? It sounded like a perfect plan to go out, ride the metro, visit the biggest shopping mall in the city, and spend some time in the bookstore. I stood up, washed my cup, and looked around my small apartment. The morning sun was shining through the window, painting the walls in a soft golden color. I took my jacket from the chair, put my wallet and phone in my pocket, and left the apartment. Outside, the city was waking up slowly. The street was calm. A few people were walking their dogs, and the smell of fresh bread came from a bakery nearby. The air was cool but pleasant, with a light breeze that made the leaves move gently. I put my hands in my pockets and started walking toward the metro station. The city felt familiar and safe, like an old friend. Cars passed by quietly, the sound of their engines echoing between the buildings. I enjoyed watching how the morning light reflected in the shop windows and how a few people hurried along the sidewalk with coffee cups in their hands. After 10 minutes, I reached the metro entrance. The gray metal stairs led down into the underground world. I could already hear the distant rumble of trains. The air underground was cooler and smelled of metal and dust. I took my travel card from my pocket, touched it to the screen, and the gate opened with a short beep. I went down the escalator, feeling the familiar vibration under my feet. At the platform, people were waiting silently. Some looked tired, others lost in thought. A man in a dark coat was reading a newspaper. A young woman stood nearby, listening to music with her eyes closed. A small child held his mother's hand, looking at the tunnel with curiosity. The train arrived with a rush of air. Its doors opened, and people came out quickly while others stepped inside. I found a free seat near the window and sat down. The doors closed, and the train started moving with a soft shake. Through the glass, I saw the dark tunnel passing by, lights flashing in rhythm as the train moved forward. The sound of wheels on rails created a steady, almost calming noise. I liked that sound. It reminded me of all the times I had traveled somewhere with purpose, even for something small like buying a book. At the next stop, more people came in. I watched them quietly, trying to guess their stories. An old man with a cane sat across from me. He looked peaceful, his eyes following the advertisements above the doors. 2 teenagers were laughing about something, showing each other their phones. A woman in a red coat stood near the door, holding a shopping bag full of groceries. Everyone seemed to be going somewhere, maybe to meet friends, maybe to work, maybe to rest. It made me think about how every person in the city moves in their own rhythm, carrying their small dreams and plans. After 3 stops, the train slowed down again. A voice announced the name of the station. The one I needed. I stood up, waited for the doors to open, and stepped out into the bright underground hall. The station was connected directly to the shopping mall, so I followed the crowd toward the escalator. As soon as I entered, a wave of warm air and quiet music greeted me. The place was huge, full of light and color. The glass ceiling let the sunlight in, and it reflected on the shiny floor. Shops lined both sides of the wide corridor. The smell of coffee and pastries mixed with the scent of perfume and new clothes. People were walking slowly, some carrying shopping bags, some just looking around. I walked past clothing stores, electronics shops, and cafes until I saw the bookstore. Its big glass windows were covered with posters of new releases. Right in the center, there was one with Dan Brown's name on it. I smiled immediately and went inside. The air smelled like paper and ink, one of my favorite smells in the world. The store was quiet, with soft instrumental music playing in the background. Shelves full of books stretched from one wall to the other, and small tables displayed bestsellers and new arrivals. I walked slowly between the shelves, looking at the covers. Some were bright and colorful, others were simple and elegant. I liked to read the titles and imagine what stories were hidden inside. There were novels, travel books, cookbooks, and even children's stories. Each one seemed to invite me to open it and enter another world. Finally, I saw it. The new Dan Brown novel. The cover was dark blue with golden letters, showing an ancient symbol in the center. I picked it up carefully, feeling the smooth surface of the cover under my fingers. The paper smelled fresh, the pages crisp and clean. I turned it over and read the description. It promised another adventure full of mystery, art, and history, exactly what I loved. I stood there for a few minutes, holding the book and smiling around me. People walked quietly between the shelves, reading the first pages of new books or taking photos of covers they wanted to buy later. The bookstore felt peaceful, a small island of calm inside the busy shopping mall. I decided to stay a little longer. Near the window there was a small cafe inside the store. The smell of coffee and vanilla mixed with the soft sound of pages turning. I bought a cappuccino and sat down at a small wooden table. From there, I could see the people passing outside through the glass wall. Shoppers with colorful bags, children running, couples walking hand in hand. I placed my new book on the table and looked at it again. It felt nice just to have it. I thought about all the evenings I would spend reading it. Sitting at home with a cup of tea and quiet music, following the adventures of Dan Brown's characters through mysterious cities and ancient secrets. As I sipped my coffee, I opened the first page. The paper was soft, the text clean and inviting. I read the first paragraph and immediately that familiar feeling came. As if I was being pulled into another world. Dan Brown's style was like a door that opened easily, leading straight into a story full of energy and curiosity. After a few pages, I closed the book. I didn't want to read too much yet. It was something to enjoy slowly. I finished my coffee, looked around the bookstore one last time, and walked to the counter. The cashier smiled and asked if I found what I wanted. I nodded, paid for the book, and put it carefully into a small paper bag. The bag was light, but it felt important, like I was carrying a small treasure. When I left the store, the bright light of the mall made everything look almost golden. The sound of voices and footsteps surrounded me again, but I still felt calm, as if the quiet from the bookstore had stayed with me. The way back to the metro was short. I walked slowly, passing the same shops, watching people laugh and talk. I liked observing them. Everyone seemed to have their own story, their own small happiness for the day. When I reached the metro station, I took the escalator down and waited for the next train. The tunnel was full of warm air, and I could hear the sound of another train disappearing into the distance. I held my paper bag carefully, like something fragile. When the train arrived, I stepped inside and found a seat near the window again. The carriage was not crowded. A few people sat quietly, looking at their phones or reading newspapers. I took the book out of the bag, feeling the smooth cover again. The train started moving. The soft shaking of the carriage and the sound of the wheels made it easy to relax. I opened the book and began to read. The story started in a museum. I could almost see the paintings and feel the mystery building. As the train passed from one station to the next, I forgot about everything around me. The noise, the people, the city, all of it disappeared into the background. Only the book and the story existed. I looked up for a moment and saw my reflection in the window behind it. The dark tunnel flashed by with short bursts of light. I smiled. It felt good to spend the day like this, simple, quiet, but full of small, pleasant moments. At my stop, I carefully closed the book and stood up. I stepped out of the train, climbed the stairs, and felt the cool evening air on my face. The city lights were shining softly, and the sky was turning dark blue. I walked home slowly, still thinking about the story I had started to read. When I reached my street, I looked up at the windows glowing with warm light. I felt peaceful, happy in a quiet, simple way. That night, as I sat on my couch with a cup of tea and opened the book again, I realized how little things can make life beautiful. A free morning, a ride on the metro, and a new story waiting to be